going to teach today on a lesson that we talked about during our Sabbath meeting today, and we're reading from the book of Second Baruch. For those of you that might not have heard of Baruch, the book, Baruch and Third and Fourth Ezra, and about 16 books were removed from the King James Bible in the 1820s, 1823. If they were still in the King James today, it would be a totally different read. There is no doubt what these books are saying about the end times, and they're not saying anything different than Isaiah or Jeremiah. Baruch is given some pretty vivid visions of the day of trouble, the end of the end. And so anyway, we're going to be talking about some of those visions. Today, I'm going to start in Second Baruch, chapter 36, and we're going to compare some of what Baruch is saying to what the other prophets have said, and just see if they're not saying the exact same thing, because they are. But anyway, we've been raised in a world today where we've been told the Old Testament is old, the New Testament is new. The Old Testament is not for us. The New Testament is the new covenant, and that's all we really need to know. But we're going to find out that we clearly need to know what's in this Old Testament. All of the prophecies about end time are coming from from the Old Testament, from the prophets. All right. And I raised the question, we'll talk about that today. Is Paul a prophet? A lot of the New Testament was given to us by Paul. And the question being, is Paul a prophet? And the answer is no. Paul is a scholar. Paul has a lot of wisdom about what the prophet said. And so anyway, without carrying on too much about the introduction, we'll just kind of get right into it. We're going to jump in. We've been teaching out of Baruch for a couple of weeks now, Second Baruch. And today we're going to talk about the second vision that Baruch had, and the interpretation given him by the angel. And to put it in context, Baruch wrote this about the time that Judah was being taken away into captivity into Babylon. And so in the same time frame as Jeremiah, he was contemporary with Jeremiah. They spoke. The King James and Jeremiah mentions him that Baruch was a scribe. Well, he was more than a scribe. He was a prophet, and there were some tremendous prophecies that came through Baruch. In and of himself, he was a great prophet. And anyway, this was one of the visions about the time that Judah was being taken away into captivity. Baruch was given this vision. This is the second of the visions that he was shown. But anyway, this is where we're at in our teaching, in our Sabbath teaching. So we're just going to teach that in this video too. Second Baruch, chapter 36, verse 1. And when I had said these things, I fell asleep there, and I saw a vision in the night. And lo, a forest of trees planted in the plain, and lofty and rugged rocky mountains surrounded it. And that forest occupied much space. And lo, over against it arose a vine, and from under it went forth a fountain peacefully. Now that fountain came to the forest and was stirred into great waves, and those waves submerged that forest. And suddenly they rooted out the greater part of that forest, and overthrew it, all of the mountains which were round about it. And the height of the forest began to be made low. And the top of the mountains were made low, that the fountain prevailed greatly, so that it left nothing of that great forest save for one cedar only. Also, when it had cast it down and had destroyed and rooted out that greater part of the forest, so that nothing was left of it, nor could its place be recognized. Then that vine began to come with the fountain and peace and great tranquility. And it came to a place which was not far from the cedar, and they brought that cedar which had been cast down to it. And behold, and lo, and I beheld, and lo, that vine opened its mouth and spoke. And it said to the cedar, Are you not that cedar which was left of the forest of wickedness? And by whose means wickedness persisted and was wrought all those years, and goodness never. And did you keep conquering that which was not yours? And to that which was yours, did you never show compassion? And you did not keep extending your power over, and you did keep extending your power over those who were far from you and those who drew near to you. And you did hold fast to the toils of your wickedness, and you did uplift yourself always as one that could not be rooted out. But now your time is sped and your hour is come. Do also therefore depart, O cedar, after the forest which departed before you, and become dust with it. And let your ashes be mingled together, and now recline in anguish and rest in torment till your last time come, in which you will come again and be tormented still more. Okay, now the vision that Baruch just had is it's the same story we hear in Revelation. We're gonna see, and I'm just going to jump forward to chapter 39, and an angel of Yahweh is going to interpret that vision to Baruch and tell him what he had just dreamed, tell him what the meaning of that dream was. And so he's answering Baruch saying, what does this mean? And this is the angel, and he answered and said unto me, Baruch, this is the interpretation of the vision which you have seen. As you have seen in the great forest, as you have seen the great forest which lofty and rugged mountains surrounded, this is the word. Okay, so in the dream, the lofty and rugged mountains and the forest and the lofty and rugged mountains were the word. And so was this the word that was given up to the point that Baruch lived? And the answer is yes. But was this also the word that would come after Baruch? And again, the answer is yes. And we'll understand that in a minute. But the mountains and the forest represent the word of Yah. Okay. Behold, the days come, and this kingdom will be destroyed, which once destroyed Zion, and it will be subjected to that which comes after it. So at that time, Babylon was coming against Zion, and he's saying this kingdom will be destroyed. Babylon will be destroyed. And it will be subjected to the kingdom that comes after it. Well, Persia was the next kingdom that, you remember, the handwriting on the walls, you've been found wanting, and weighed and measured and found wanting. And in one night, Persia overthrew Babylon. Okay, so Babylon was thrown down. Moreover, that also, again, after a time will be destroyed. So he's saying that Persia will take over Babylon, but after a time, Persia will be destroyed. Okay, so this is future stuff for Baruch. And a third will arise, and also that will have dominion for its time, and it will be destroyed. Okay, so Greece is the nation that comes up after Persia, right? And this is all future stuff for Baruch. Okay, he's prophesying about these kingdoms that are coming. So you're going to have Babylon will be destroyed, Persia will be destroyed, Greece will come and they will be destroyed. And after these things, a fourth kingdom will arise. Well, who was that? That was Rome, whose power will be harsh and evil, far beyond those which were before it. And it will rule many times as a forest on the plain, and it will hold fast to the times, and it will exalt itself more than the cedars of Lebanon. And by it the truth will be hidden. Okay, so by who? The truth will be hidden by Rome. We're going to get into the fact that the Roman Catholic Church had a big hand in this before it's over. All those who are polluted with iniquity will flee to it, as evil beasts flee and creep into the forest. Okay, if you look up the word iniquity, you know, a lot of people don't like to hear this. Look it up in Strong's. Look it up in Thayer. Look it over in Brown Driver and Briggs. Look it up in the three main concordances, the ones that all other concordances go by. That word iniquity will come back. Strong's describes it as without the law, specifically the law of Moses. Okay, they are without the Torah. Okay, the law of Moses is the Torah. Iniquity always means the same thing. They are without the Torah. Okay, so let's read that again with that word iniquity. And by it the truth will be hidden, and all those who are polluted with iniquity, Torahlessness, will flee to it. So those people who are Torahless are going to flock to this final kingdom. Okay, who's the final kingdom that he's talking about? It's Rome. It's the Roman Empire. They're going to flee to it as evil beasts flee and creep into the forest. So there's going to be Torahlessness coming into the word. The forest is the word. Okay, and those who are polluted with iniquity, Torahlessness, will flock to that. And as wild beasts flee and creep into the forest. So iniquity is going, Torahlessness is going to creep into that forest, the word. Okay, in this fifth kingdom. Fourth kingdom, I'm sorry, into this fourth kingdom, the Roman Empire. Torahlessness is going to creep into this kingdom. And it will come to pass when the time of consummation it should fall has approached, when the time of consummation and that it should fall is approached. And then the principate of my Mashiach will be revealed. Okay. This is deep, and I don't know that I totally understand principate. Principate, if you look it up, is the first period of the Roman Empire. A principate would be from roughly 28 BC to 300 AD-ish. There are three phases of the Roman Empire. The first phase is called the principate. There's a lot of study on this, and I'm going to give my opinion. It's not fact, it's my opinion. What you see coming online at the end of the principate is the Pope. Okay, the principate of my Messiah. So I don't know. I don't understand the principate of the Messiah. It's talking about a Roman period, a principate of my Messiah. But in my mind, I'm seeing the Pope. The end of the principate rings on the Pope, who is saying, I am God on earth. I am the Messiah. The Messiah is not on earth anymore. I am now the Messiah on earth. And if you don't believe me, check it out. The Pope believes he is God on earth. That's in his credentials. That's who he claims to be. That's who he, pompous words they're saying. Pontificate, that's exactly what that means. They're going to be saying pompous words. It will come to pass that when the time of its consummation, that it should fall, has approached. So the first part of this Roman Empire is falling around the time of Constantine. The principate period of the Roman Empire ends at about the time of Constantine, as the birth of the Roman Catholic Church and the birth of the Pope. That's where That's the only way I can make sense of it in my mind, is that the Pope is the principate of the Messiah, that he's claiming to be the Messiah on earth after the Messiah is gone. The principate of my Messiah will be revealed, which is like a fountain in the vine. And when it is revealed, it will root out the multitude of its host, and is touching that which you have seen, the lofty cedar which was left out of that forest, and the fact that the vine spoke those words with it, which you did hear. This is the word. Okay, so that's the vision that Baruch was shown. And basically, he's telling the same thing as what's happening in the end of Revelation. He's talking about that time when the Messiah and Michael the archangel, when they put down this rebellion on earth. And we'll see it a little bit more as we go forward. But it's that time when Hasatan is cast into the pit. That's what's going on in this vision. It's telling the same story as Revelation is telling when it's describing Hasatan being bound and cast into the pit. Okay, this is Baruch's version of that same event. In chapter 40, verse 1, the last leader of that time will be left alive when the multitude of hosts will be put to the sword. Okay, so this is at the end of Megiddo. This is at the very end. This is when the judgment's happening. They're cast into the pit. And he will be bound, and they will take him up to Mount Zion, and my Mashiach, my Messiah, will convict him of all his impieties, and will gather and set before him all the works of his host, all of those who join forces with him. And afterwards he will be put to death. Okay, so he's not just cast into the pit, he's put to death. So it's not Hasatan. It's one of the world leaders at that time, who will be put to death. Afterward, he will put him to death. And then it says he will protect the rest of my people. The Mashiach will protect the rest of his people, which shall be found in the place which I have chosen. Okay. And his principate will stand forever until the world of corruption is at end, and until the times aforesaid are fulfilled. This is the vision, and this is its interpretation. Okay, so we've just seen a glimpse of that event at the end of time, when the Mashiach has come back to bring judgment on those who rebelled against him on the earth. Okay, it's going to be a bad day. Chapter 41, second Baruch. And I answered and said, for whom and for how many shall these things be? Or who will be worthy to live at that time? For I will speak before you everything that I think, and I will ask you regarding those things which I meditate. For lo, I see many people who have withdrawn from your covenant. Okay, so Baruch is talking to this angel, and he's speaking as if he's speaking to Yah too. He's saying, I see a lot of people who have withdrawn from your covenant. And how did they do that? They cast from themselves the yoke of your Torah. Okay. So Baruch is saying at the end of time, when he's at the same time, when he's getting ready to throw Hasatan into the pit, in that time frame, that day of trouble, that day of tribulation, that's the time frame this vision is occurring in. He says, I see many of your people who have withdrawn from your covenant and cast away from them the yoke of your Torah. So Baruch is saying there's going to be a lot of people that have turned from the Torah. That's no different than what we saw in the vision, that the people with iniquity, Toralessness, would flock to this Roman Empire. Okay, we live in a world today that is Toraless. They do not believe in the Torah. The church does not. They teach the Torah is done away with. Well, one of them's wrong. The church, somebody's wrong. Either Baruch or the church today that says the Torah has been done away with, the instructions of Yah have been done away with, somebody's wrong. Okay. And before you start throwing rocks at Baruch and saying, well, it's got to be Baruch, let's read Baruch and let's start comparing him to what the other prophets are saying, because Baruch doesn't say anything different than Isaiah or Jeremiah or Ezekiel or Ezra or Micah or Malachi or Zephaniah or Zechariah or Hosea, any of the other prophets. They're all saying the exact same thing. Okay. Now you might say, well, Baruch's wrong, but Isaiah, is he wrong? Is Jeremiah wrong? Is Ezekiel wrong? Is Daniel wrong? Is Hosea wrong? Is Micah, Malachi, Zephaniah, Zechariah, are these prophets wrong? Because before you throw a rock at Baruch, let's see what the other prophets say, because they say the exact same thing. Okay. But others, again, back in 2 Baruch 41:4, but others, again, I have seen who have forsaken their vanity and fled to the refuge beneath your wings. Okay, we've heard this talk before, right? He's going to put you under his wings. The safety is going to be under his wings. Okay, so is that saying anything at all different than what these other scriptures are saying? And so I'm going to screen share. Let's just start looking, comparing with these other prophets, what they're saying. Screen share. Yep. Okay, there. And there, I think. Okay, I think you can all still see me. Okay, we're going to go to the book of Psalms. And if you've not heard me say this before, the book of Psalms is probably the biggest book of prophecy in our King James Bible today. This is not just David and Solomon running around, staying alive, trying to stay alive in their time. This is prophecy about the end time. In fact, I'm not going to go there, but if we go to look at the first chapter of Psalms, well, let's just look. It begins by the wicked being destroyed off the face of the earth. Let me see. This one, King James. Psalms 1:4, the ungodly are not so, but they are like chaff that the wind drives away. This is end time speech. The chaff that will be burned up. Therefore, the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. He's talking about the unrighteousness being burned off the face of the earth. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the ungodly shall perish. This is end time stuff. And it's that way all the way through chapter 150. But right now, we're just going to go to 91, I think is where I want to go. 91. Yeah, let's see if this doesn't sound really close to what Baruch is saying. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. And I will say of Yahweh that he is my refuge and my fortress. We know these scriptures. My Elohim, in him I will trust. Surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. This is end time stuff. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Isn't that just pretty close to what Baruch has just said? But others again I've seen who have forsaken their vanity and fled under their refuge beneath your wings. Okay, that's exactly what we're hearing right here in Psalms. This is end time stuff. This in Baruch, this is the very end of the vision that's being interpreted to him. At the very end, that there would be a group of people who would turn from their vanity and seek refuge under his wing. Okay, now isn't that what Psalms is telling us? He that dwelleth in that secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of Yahweh, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God, my Elohim, in him I will trust. Surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler, and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Okay, so we're supposed to let's forget about everything we've been taught. Let's just read scripture. Let's see what scripture says. Everybody tells you this Old Testament's not for you. This is end time prophecy. This is end time prophecy in Baruch. So who are the people who are I've seen who have forsaken their vanity and fled for refuge beneath your wings? The same thing that it's saying in Psalms. I will say to Yahweh, he is my refuge and my fortress. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shall thou trust. That's exactly what Baruch is saying. So nothing different. Who are those who seek refuge under his wings? Those who turn away from vanity. Okay, in this scenario, vanity would be pride. It would be, well, I'm keeping up with the Joneses. I've got a new car. I've got a new house. I've got, I'm all that. Okay. So the people who seek refuge under his wing are going to turn away from that pride, that vanity, that I'm all that, and they're going to turn to meekness. He's going to say plainly, the meek shall inherit the earth. He's going to say plainly, they're going to be the poor and the destitute. They're not going to be the proud and the lofty. The ones that seek refuge under his wings will be the ones who turn away from the vanity of the world, the pride, the keeping up with the Joneses. It goes against our grain to, I don't want anybody to think I'm poor. I don't want anybody to think I'm destitute, but it plainly is going to say, not in Baruch, but in some of these other prophets, that those will be the people who find shelter under his wing. So anyway, we have to kind of evaluate our pride, right? I mean, pride's a big deal. That was what brought down Hasatan, right? Pride. Going on in 2 Baruch 41:5, what therefore will be to them, or how will the last time receive them? What time is this? If there's any question, this is the last time. How will the last time receive them? Or perhaps the time of these will assuredly be weighed, and as the beam inclines, will they be judged accordingly. So as the beam inclines, it's the ticking of time. It's the last of time. The beam's inclining, and the very last. How will these people in the last days? How will they be judged, and will they be judged accordingly? And he answered and said unto me in chapter 42, these things also will I show you, as for what you have said, to whom these things will be, and how many will they be? Now, again, I'm going to go to another book of Apocrypha. It's the book of 4th Ezra. If I can remember. Okay, I had to go find the scripture. We're talking about, as for what you said, to whom will these things be, and how many will they be? So he's asking how many people in the end times are going to be saved. That's a question that Baruch is asking. So we're going to go to a book called 4th Ezra, or it's known in the Latin as 2nd Esdras. Again, these 3rd and 4th Ezra were books that were in the King James Bible, and they were removed all at the same time. In 1823, the last of the books were taken out of the King James Bible. But if these books were still there, there are a lot of answers that are in these books. And so Ezra, this is the same Ezra that you're familiar with. Ezra is talking about that same thing. He's been shown a vision and he's asking questions. Same thing. An angel is telling him these things. And so I'm going to go to 4th Ezra 9, chapter 9, verse 7. and talking about the same thing. How many will be saved? And everyone that shall be saved and shall abide and shall be able to escape by his works. Okay, well, let's stop there for just a second. They're going to escape by their works. And so I just want to go, let's compare that real quick to, let's see, we're on James 2:17. James 2:17. Let's see what James does say about this. Even so, faith, if it has not works, is dead, being alone. You may say, thou hast faith, and I have works. Show me thy faith without thy works, and I will show you my faith by my works. Thou believest, well, that's where we need to, well, let's read on. Thou believest that there is one Elohim that does well, but the devils also believe and tremble. But wilt thou know, vain man, there we're talking about that same thing. There's that vanity again, right? Who's gonna survive this time? The ones who go under his wings, that turn away from their vanity. But wilt thou know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead? Okay, so what is it saying here in 4th Ezra? Everyone that shall be saved and shall be able to escape by his works. Okay, so he's saying that not just belief. I mean, even Hasatan believes, right? The devils also believe, right? Your belief alone is not going to protect you, but your works as well. But and shall be able to escape by his works and by belief. Faith without works is dead. Whereby you have believed shall be preserved from the said perils, and shall see my salvation in my land with my borders, for I have sanctified them for me from the beginning. Then shall they be in pitiful case, which now have abused my ways, and they that have cast away despitefully shall dwell in torments. We'll see what they cast away despitefully. For such as in their life they have received benefits and have not known me. What does he say in Matthew? We've done all these things in your name. We've cast out demons. We've healed the sick. And he says, depart from me because you don't even know me. I don't know you. Right? Same thing it's saying here. Such in their life have received benefits and have not known me. And they have hated my Torah. Okay, this is end time. This is how many people will be saved in the end time. And then he's saying, what does it say in Matthew? We've done all these things in your name. We've cast out demons. We've healed the sick. We've prophesied in your name. And he says, depart from me, for I never knew you, you workers of iniquity. Okay, what's iniquity? Torahlessness. Every concordance defines iniquity as not only without the law, but specifically without the law of Moses, the Torah. You are Torahless. What's it saying here? And they have hated my Torah. Okay. And we're going to see that Baruch is saying this. He's saying pretty close to what Psalms is saying. We're going to see that all of the other prophets are saying this exact same thing when it comes to that day of trouble, the tribulation. Those people that are going to be in trouble have hated my Torah. Okay. Well, they had yet liberty, and when as yet a place of repentance was open to them, a place of repentance was open to them, they understood not, but despised it. They despised what? They despised the Torah. Okay. These same must know after death by pain, and therefore be not curious of how the wicked shall be punished, and when, how the wicked shall be punished and when they will be punished, but inquire how the righteous will be saved, whose the world is, and for whom the world was created. Don't worry about how I'm going to punish those wicked people who he says are without the Torah. Don't worry about them or how many or how. Don't worry about them, but worry about who, inquire about the righteous that shall be saved, and whose world it is, and from whom the world was created. Then I answered and I said, I have said before, and now do I speak, and I will speak it also hereafter, that there be many more of them which perish than of them which shall be saved. So Ezra has had a vision too, and Ezra sees the end of the world, and basically, I'm just going to paraphrase what he's saying. He's shown this vision of the world, and it's on fire and it's burning. And Ezra says, this angel comes to him and he says, man, all the people they die. In the end times, they die, they burn. Is there nothing we can do? And the angel said, nope. And so Ezra, same thing. He has another vision. The angel comes back and he said, man, I had another vision. Everybody dies. They all die in the end of time. Is there nothing we can do? And the angel said, no. This went on for several times, 6 times. And finally, he said, man, everybody dies. Is there nothing we can do? And the angel said, yeah. He said, write down these words and write down this vision, and we'll send it to the people at the end of time. Well, Ezra did. And after he had done it, he asked the angel, did we make a difference? And he said, not much. Most people are still going to turn from the Torah. That's the whole vision that Ezra's seeing. And so of that, he says, there be many more of them that perish. So in his vision, he's saying, I'm still seeing a vision, and most people are still dying. There will be many more of them which perish than of them which shall be saved. And the angel answered him like this. He said, like a wave is greater than a drop of water. Okay. So if you can imagine the amount of people that are going to be saved, he's comparing it to a drop of water out of a wave. The wave will be destroyed, but a drop of water will be saved. Okay. That's hard to hear, but that's what Ezra's vision was. And that was in our King James Bible until the 1820s. And Ezra is saying nothing different than Isaiah or Jeremiah, and we'll find that out. So going back, let's look again back in 2nd Baruch. It's the same thing that Baruch is seeing in his vision, his night dream. And he answered and said unto me, these things also will I show unto you. As for what you said, to whom will these things be, and how many will they be? Well, Ezra just answered that. They will be like a drop of water out of a wave. The path is narrow. Most are not going to find it. So let's go on now in Baruch. Baruch, 2nd Baruch 42, we're still in verse 2. To those who have believed, there shall be the good which was spoken of aforetime, and those who despise, there shall be the contrary of these things. They believe in what? The Torah. Or they despise what? The Torah. Both Baruch and Ezra are saying the exact same thing. There will be, in the end times, there will be a remnant, a small group who come back and believe the Torah. Majority will not believe the Torah. Where do we find ourselves in the world today? The world, this is early Sunday morning when I'm recording this. All around the world tomorrow, on every pulpit around the world, the Torah is not being taught in most churches. It's been despised. It's been done away with. To those who believe in the Torah, there shall be the good, which was spoken of aforetime. And to those who despise the Torah, there shall be the contrary of these things. And so for you that are saying, well, Baruch is wrong, that's totally wrong, and nobody else says that, or Ezra is wrong, he's totally wrong, nobody else is saying that. We're going to see that Jeremiah says that, Isaiah says that, Hosea says that, Ezekiel says that, Malachi says that, Micah says that, Zephaniah says that, Zacharias, all of the prophets are saying the exact same thing. But we've been told, oh, the Old Testament's not for you. Well, if you want to know what the end times prophets say, you got to read the Old Testament, because you're not going to find them in the New Testament unless somebody's quoting them. So anyway, let's just go on, and then we're going to start comparing what Baruch is saying to all the other prophets and see if they're not saying the exact same thing. As for what you said regarding those who have drawn near and those who have withdrawn, this is a word. They have drawn near to the Torah, or they have withdrawn from the Torah. These are the two groups of people in question. As for those who were before subject, afterwards withdrew and mingled himself with the seed of mingled people. The time of these was the former, and was accounted as something exalted. So let's see who he's talking about here. This people. As for those who were before subject, okay, Paul talks about that in Romans 1, right? Let's see what Paul's got to say. It's going to be around 16, 17, 18. Okay, we'll just start in 18. Paul's talking about this group of people, this people who were before subject and afterwards withdrew. Okay, this is the people Paul's talking about in Romans 1:18. We'll start there. For the wrath of Elohim is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness, because that which may be known of Elohim is manifest in them, for Elohim has showed it to them. The invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so they are without excuse. These people who were before subject and afterwards withdrew. That's these people Paul's talking about here. Because that when they knew Elohim, they glorified him not as Elohim, neither were they thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish hearts were darkened. So they knew him, but they turned from him, who were before subject and afterwards withdrew, right? Same people. Paul's talking about them in Romans. Baruch is talking about them in chapter 42, 2nd Baruch. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools and changed the glory of the uncorruptible Elohim into an image made like corruptible man, and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. They made idols. Wherefore Elohim gave them up to their uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of Elohim into a lie. They knew the truth, but they changed it to a lie, and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever and ever. Amen. For this cause Elohim gave them up for their vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use of that which is against nature. And likewise also the man, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust, one toward another, men with men, working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense for the error which was meat. And even as they did not like to retain Elohim in their knowledge, they knew him, but they turned away from him. They did not want to retain him in their knowledge. They were before subject, as Baruch says, and afterwards withdrew and mingled himself with the seed of mingled people. Yahweh gave them over to their reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of Elohim, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding. And this one gets me because this one's been removed from most modern Bibles, but it's in the older King James. They were covenant breakers. I don't know, maybe your Bible has that. Maybe you still do. But they took covenant breaker out of Romans 1:31. I don't know if they didn't have room for it in the new Bibles or what, but they were covenant breakers. They had a covenant, right? What does he say? That these, for lo, I see many people who have withdrawn from your covenant. These guys here were covenant breakers, right? They withdrew from the covenant. Okay. Covenant breakers without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful. This one's a clincher, who knowing the judgment of Yahweh, that they which commit such things are worthy of death. Going clear back to Exodus and Deuteronomy, back to the beginning. He said, I set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life, that you'll have life more abundantly. If you do what I say, it brings life. If you don't do what I say, it brings death. And these people knew that they which committed such things are worthy of death, right? These are those people, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. Okay, so these people that Paul's talking about in Romans are the same people that Baruch is talking about in Baruch 42. And let's just buzz through it again. As for those who were before subject and afterwards withdrew and mingled himself with the seed of mingled people, in the time of these was the former. So when that happened, it was the former time, and was accounted as something exalted. So wait a minute. They turned away from God, but it was accounted as something exalted. If you've watched my video on the house of Israel, the covenant in the house of Israel, you'll understand these people are the northern 10 tribes. They are the Israel from the Bible. The kingdom was split. There was Israel in the north and Judah in the south, the 10 kingdoms in the north that were carried off into captivity because they turned their back on Yah. These are those people, those 10 kingdoms who he dispersed to all the nations, and they never came back. Judah was taken into captivity in Babylon, but Judah came back. So we know the story of Judah, but that's the end of the, all the prophecies say that the house of Israel will not come back until the very end. Okay. These are those people, okay, who were before subject and afterwards withdrew themselves. The same people Paul's talking about in Romans 1:18 through 30. And so now we're going to go on in 2nd Baruch 42:5. As for those who knew not, but afterwards knew life. So they didn't know about the Torah, but afterwards they knew life. They returned to the Torah. As for those who before knew not, but afterwards knew life and mingled only with the seed of the people which had separated itself in the time of these is the latter, and is accounted as something exalted. So it was always the plan from the creation. He says that from the beginning, it was always the plan that he was going to, these people would rebel. They would turn their back on him. He would scatter into the whole earth. They would scatter into the whole earth. And at the very end, they would come back. These are those who before knew not about the Torah. Okay, I grew up my whole life and thought the Torah was old. It was done away with. It was wrong. But afterwards knew the Torah, that the Torah was true. They knew life. I said before you life and death, blessing and curse. Paul's talking about it in Romans. That those who commit such things are worthy of death. These people are coming back to life. I set before you life and death, blessing and curse. If you do what I tell you, it brings life. It brings blessing. If you don't do what I tell you, it brings a curse. It brings death. These people are coming back to life, keeping his instruction, and mingled only with the seed of the people which had separated itself. The time of these is the latter. Okay, so it's the latter time. As also accounted as something exalted. It was exalted when he scattered them and they turned their back on him. He considered that exalted because ultimately it was his plan. They would go to the whole earth They would mingle with the Gentiles, and at the end of time, the Gentiles would return. The fullness of the Gentiles would come in. They would return back to the Torah. Let's go to Zephaniah 3. Let's see. We're seeing what Baruch says. Let's see what Zephaniah 3 has to say in 19. Behold, at that time, I will undo all that afflict thee, and I will save her that halteth, and gather her that was driven out. I will get them praise and fame in every land. And I don't know if that's 101, 3. Oh, okay. Back up. Take 2. 3:9. Let's start there. This is going to sound better. See, Zephaniah is saying the same thing as Baruch. Okay. For then I will return to the people of pure language, right? That they may all call upon the name, and it says the Lord, but the Lord is not his name, right? He's going to restore a pure language so we'll know his Hebrew name, his real name, Yahweh, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, Yahweh. Zephaniah is saying this. For then I will turn to the people a pure language, that they may call upon the name of Yahweh to serve him with one consent. They're all going to be saying the same thing, believing the same thing. From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, my suppliants, even the daughter of my dispersed, shall bring mine offering. In that day, anytime it says in that day, that's almost always talking about that day of trouble, that day of affliction. In that day, we're going to see that over and over. In that day thou shalt not be ashamed for all thy doings. You're not going to be ashamed because you're transgressing the Torah. Wherein your works, wherein thou hast transgressed. Transgressed what? Against me, against the Torah. You have transgressed the Torah. If you want to know what sin is, what is it? I think it's 1 John 3:4. Sin is transgression of the Torah. That's John given that definition. If you want to look up sin in concordance, that blows my mind. You will not find the word sin. It gives a definition. It's a name of a town in a desert is sin. Strong's concordance does not want to touch that word sin. Because they don't want to go where it goes. Sin is transgression of the Torah. Okay, so back to Zephaniah. Wherein thou hast transgressed the Torah against me. For then I will take away out of the midst of thee them that rejoice in thy pride. Okay, now we've been talking about this in Baruch, right? Who are going to go under the shelter of his wings? Those who turn from their vanity, their pride. Okay, so what's happening? This is in that day. This is a day of trouble. I will take out of the middle of these people them that rejoice in pride, and they shall no more be haughty because of my holy mountain. I will also leave in the midst of thee an afflicted and poor people, and they shall trust in the name Yahweh. Okay, so they've turned from their pride. They've turned from their vanity. They're not trying to keep up with the Joneses. We have something inherent in us that does not want anybody else to see that we are not doing well. We're not prospering. Nobody wants anybody to think, oh, they're poor. Well, who are the people who are left? I'm not making this up. I will take out of the midst of thee them that rejoice in pride, and thou shalt no more be haughty because of my holy mountain. I will also leave in the midst of thee an afflicted and poor people, and they shall trust in the name of Yahweh. And a remnant of Israel shall do no iniquity. What's iniquity? Toralessness. The remnant of Israel shall not be Toraless, nor speak lies, neither shall a deceitful tongue be found in their mouth, for they shall feed and lie down, and none shall make them afraid. Okay, is Is Zephaniah saying anything different than Baruch? No. He's saying that those with pride, those who are lifted up, those who have vanity will be removed. Okay. Exact same thing that Baruch just said. We're going to see this remnant over and over and over, this drop of a wave, right? In Second Ezra, right? That's what it describes it as. Think about a drop out of a wave. Okay, well, that's not very much. The path is narrow. Most are not going to find it. And it's sad, but that's what's going on. So anyway, we're going to just finish out in chapter 42, and then we're going to just go through and bounce through the prophets and see if Baruch and Ezra are saying anything different than all the other prophets, because they're saying the exact same thing. Okay. And the time shall succeed to time, and season to season, and one shall receive from another. And then with the view of the consummation, I mean, I'm not going to go there, but Daniel's talking a lot about this consummation, right? We're talking about this all through the Bible. This is end time stuff. A view to the consummation shall everything be compared to the measure of times and the hours and to the season. For corruption, again, Paul's talking about this corruption, this going from corruption to incorruption. Well, let's just go on. Let's see where Paul's talking about this. Let's see maybe where Paul got some of what he's saying. For the corruption shall take those that belong to it, and life those that belong to it. And the dust shall be called, and there shall be said to it, there shall be said to it, give back that which is not yours, and raise up all that you have kept until this time. What's it talking about? The dead. Give up the dead. This is the end of Baruch's vision. This is the final part of the interpretation of Baruch's vision. How did it end? That it's telling the dust to give up that which did not belong to it. The dead. And this corruption. Let's see. Paul is pulling from this in 1 Thessalonians, what is that, 4:17? Yeah, right here. This is where Paul is talking about the same thing. Then we which are alive and remain shall caught up together with them. Well, let's back up. Let's go to 4:16. For Yahweh Yeshua himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, and with the voice of an archangel, and the trump of Elohim, and the dead in Mashiach shall rise first. Okay, we're only seeing this at the very end of the vision in chapter 42 in Baruch. Give back that which is not yours, and rise up that which you have kept until this time. That is the dead rising up. Okay, and if we're not going to go back today, but a few chapters before, Baruch is talking again about the dead rising up. Okay, when does that happen in Baruch's vision? That is the very last thing that's interpreted in that vision, is that the dead will rise. So Paul is talking about, I mean, if we read Paul, he's talking about the same thing, corruption to incorruption. He's talking about the same thing as Baruch. For the corruption shall take those that belong to it, and this life those that belong to it, and the dust shall be called, and there shall be said to it, give back that which is not yours, and raise up all that you have kept until this time. So that is the dead in Mashiach rising. It's the same thing that Paul's talking about there. But anyway, what we're going to do now is just kind of bounce around through some of the prophets and see if they're not saying the exact same thing that Baruch just said. Let's go. We'll begin in Romans. Let's see what Paul has to say about it in Romans. We're going to start 11:25. talking about this group of people in the end who are going to go under his wing, this drop out of a wave, who will shelter under his wing. 11:25. Let's go there and let's just look at 25. For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits. A blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. All right. Let's go back and let's look. As for those who were before subject and afterwards withdrew and mingled themselves with the seed of the mingled people, the times of these was the former, and it was accounted as something exalted. So Israel turned away from God. They turned their back on him. He scattered them to the whole earth. Okay. And then it says, as for those who before knew not, but afterwards knew life, they turned back to the Torah and mingled only with the seed of the people, which had separated itself at the time of these as the latter. So in the end time, there's going to be a group return, right? So what is Paul saying here? The blindness happened to Israel. They turned away from Yah and they were scattered until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. Nobody, ask your preacher, what's that mean? The fullness of the Gentiles come in. It's not just coming to the acceptance of the Messiah. That's a part of it. But they are going to come back into covenant. They turned away from the covenant. And also, all Israel shall be saved, as it is written, there shall come out of Zion a deliverer, the Messiah. You got to have that. And shall turn away the ungodliness from Jacob. So the fullness of Israel is the descendants of Jacob, the house of Israel that were scattered to the whole earth. And in the end time, a remnant of those people will come back. It's saying the exact same thing. Let's go to 11:15. 11:5. Even so, then as this present time, there is a remnant according to the election of grace. Okay, who are these remnant? That's the drop of water in a wave that Ezra is talking about. That's this group of people who are going to turn from vanity in the end times and shelter under his wing, right? That Baruch's talking about. Let's go to 9:27. You know, it's everywhere once we start looking. 9:27. Isaiah also crieth concerning Israel. Though the number of the children of Israel be as the sand of the sea, a remnant shall be saved. Okay, there's that remnant again. Only a remnant are going to be saved. Ezra describes it as a drop out of a wave. It's not a big number. The path is narrow. Most will not find it. So let's just go on. I could go further there, but I'm not going to. Let's go to Micah 2:12. Maybe Micah's saying something different. Let's go look at Micah. I think 2:27, is that right? Micah 2:12, I'm sorry. Okay, 2:12. Let's see if Micah's saying something different. I will surely assemble, O Jacob, all of thee. I will surely gather the remnant of Israel. Here it is again. These people are not just writing down stuff to fill up a page. These are the prophets talking. Okay. Micah's saying the same thing. I will surely gather the remnant of Israel. I will put them together as the sheep of those Bozrah, as the flock in the midst of their fold, and I shall make a great noise by the reason of the multitude of men. Is he saying anything different? No, he's saying at the end time there will be a remnant who come back to the Torah. Okay, let's see in 4:7. Maybe it's different in 4:7. I will make her that halted a remnant, and her that was cast off a strong nation. and Yahweh shall reign over them in Mount Zion and from henceforth forever and ever. When is that? That's in the end. That's the millennial reign, right? That's the end. Who's he going to reign over? Forever and ever. A remnant that was cast off. He's going to make them come back and they will be a strong nation. And Yahweh shall reign over them in Mount Zion, or Yeshua, henceforth forever and ever. That is end of the end prophecy. That is millennial reign prophecy. If you want to know what the prophets said, you're not going to find them in the New Testament unless Paul's quoting them or somebody else is quoting them. If you want to know what the end time prophets said, you have to go back and read the end time prophets. So let's look in the New Testament. Maybe it's saying something different than the Old Testament. Let's go to Revelation 12:17. 12:17. When is this? This is when the beast is here. This is when the false prophet is here. Hasatan has fallen to the earth, and the dragon was wroth with the woman, and he went to make war with the remnant. Here it is again. This remnant keeps popping up everywhere. This remnant, right? Who are the remnant? They're a drop out of a wave. This dragon was wroth. He wasn't wroth with the Baptist church or the Methodist or the Pentecostal or the Catholic church. He was wroth with the remnant of Israel. And how do you know who they were? How can you define who this remnant is? Let's look in Revelation. John's writing it down, but who's actually speaking to John? Yeshua. Okay, so these are the words of Yeshua. John's just writing them down. This is Revelation, guys. This is the end of the end. The remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of Yahweh and have the testimony of Yeshua HaMashiach. Okay, who are these remnant? How can you, at a glance, how do you know who these people are? He answers that. These are the people which keep the commandments of Yahweh. What do we call those? The Torah. They keep the Torah and have the testimony of Yeshua HaMashiach. This isn't some vague, distant, way off prophecy from prophets thousands of years before, or 1,000 years, 900 years before Yeshua, or 700 years before Yeshua. This is Revelation, right? This is the end of the book. This is the vision of John given to him by Yeshua HaMashiach. So maybe that's maybe that's not right. Maybe let's go to 14 and see if it's the same thing in 14. Revelation 14:12. Maybe it says something different here. Here's the patience of the saints. Who are the saints? Well, let's see. Here are they who keep the Torah and have the faith of Yeshua. The dragon is not chasing some Baptist. He's not chasing Joel Osteen around. He's not chasing Kenneth Copeland around. He's chasing those who have the commandments of Yahweh and have the faith of Yeshua, the Torah and the Messiah. Okay, I didn't write this. These are red letters, should be. That's Yeshua talking to John. So anyway, that's what Revelation has to say about this remnant. Who are the remnant? Well, they're the ones keeping the commandments of Yahweh. What are they're if you got to be squirming really hard to say that the commandments of Yahweh are anything other than the Torah, right? I'm not making this stuff up. Baruch's not making this stuff up. Ezra's not making this stuff up. Zephaniah wasn't making it up. Paul's not making it up. We're going to find out. Let's go to Joel. See if Joel's, maybe we'll find a prophet maybe that's not saying the same thing. Let's go to Joel 2:32. And I'm just scratching the surface, guys. We're going to go through some scriptures from some prophets, but I'm only picking off the very top, I could spend days going through these prophecies. They're all saying the exact same thing. Joel 2:32. Let's see what Joel says. Maybe it's different. And it has come to pass that whosoever shall call upon the name of Yahweh shall be saved. All right, wait a minute. What did he just say? He said, I'm going to restore a pure language to you so you can call upon my name. His name's not Lord. His name is not God. His name is Yahweh, Yahweh, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. If you want to say Yahweh, if you want to say Yahweh, it's all the vowel points and how you pronounce it. But Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, it's going to be a form of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call upon the name of Yahweh shall be saved. They're going to come to me in those days saying, Lord, Lord, we've done all these things in your name. I never knew you. Whosoever shall call upon the name of Yahweh shall be saved. For in the Mount Zion and Jerusalem shall be deliverance, and Yahweh hath said, and a remnant whom Yahweh shall call. There's that remnant again. Just keeps popping up. It's like a bad penny. It just keeps popping up everywhere. It's an inconvenient truth, right? Who are the remnant? Those keeping the commandments of Yahweh, the Torah, and the testimony of the Mashiach. All right. I mean, that's Revelation description of them. I'm not making it up. You know, it's everywhere, guys. I'm not making this up. Is Joel saying anything different than Baruch? He's saying the exact same thing. Is he saying anything different than 2nd Ezra, 4th Ezra? Is he saying anything different? He's saying the exact same thing. Those that hated the Torah will be destroyed. I'm not making this up. That's what the prophets said. Let's keep going. Maybe somebody somewhere is going to say something. Let's try Isaiah. Maybe Isaiah. Surely he's saying something different. Isaiah 10:20. Let's start there. It shall come to pass in that day. There it is again. In that day. What day? That day of trouble. Jacob's trouble. That day of tribulation, like the world has never seen. It shall come to pass in that day that the remnant of Israel, there they are again, dadgum, they just keep popping up. And such, and what day? In the end times. This remnant keeps popping up in the last day. Who are they? According to John in Revelation, they're the ones that keep the Torah and have a testimony of the Messiah. It shall come to pass in that day that the remnant of Israel and such as are escaped of the house of Jacob shall no more again stay upon him that smote them, but shall stay upon Yahweh, the Holy One of Israel, in truth. We gotta worship him in truth, right? Spirit and in truth. You know, let's forget what we've been taught. Let's look at what the words are saying. They're not saying, it's not vague. It's not hard to understand. It's like, I don't care what that says. That's not what I've been taught. I don't care what it says. Don't tell me that. I'm not making this up. These are the prophets. 10:21, the remnant shall return. There they go again. They shall return. Even the remnant of Jacob unto the mighty Elohim. For though thy people Israel be as the sand of the sea, Paul was quoting this. Remember in Romans, Paul's quoting this. He's verbatim quoting Isaiah. The remnant shall, for thy people Israel, be as the sand of the sea, yet a remnant of them shall return. The consumption decreed shall overflow with righteousness. Okay, there's that word consumption again. Now we see it in Baruch. Where's Paul? Is Paul a prophet? Paul's not a prophet. Paul's a scholar. Paul is telling us what the prophets said. I guarantee you he's pulling some of what he said from Baruch, right here what we just read. The consummation, the corruption, the dead rising. He's taking this stuff from the prophets, right? In the book of Romans, he is quoting Isaiah the prophet. Okay. Yet thy people be as the sand of the sea. So who is the sand of the sea? Israel. Okay, right? And it shall come to pass in that day that the remnant of Israel, such a are escaped to the house of Jacob. He's talking about the house of Israel, the remnant of Israel. So thy people Israel be as the sand of the sea. So we're Israel, you know. And if you haven't seen my study on the covenant with the house of Israel, you understand that if you watch that this covenant is given to the house of Israel. I'm not going to go there. Jeremiah 31:31 through 33, this covenant given to Israel. And if you figured out finally, well, wait a minute, we're Israel. Big deal. So what? So is everybody else nearly on the planet. If you're not Judah, you're Israel. If you are not from the tribe of Judah and Benjamin, you are from the tribe of Israel. And so you figure out, well, wow, we're Israel. So what? So is everybody else. We're the sand of the sea. How many sands are on the sea? There are billions. We're Israel. So what? If you're not the remnant of Israel, you're in trouble. Okay. How do you know if you're the remnant of Israel? Well, according to Revelation, they're keeping the commandments of Yahweh, the Torah, and have the testimony of the Messiah. Right? That's the covenant given in Jeremiah 31 through 33 to Israel. It says plainly. I'm not going to go there. I've said it 1,000 times, but that's the covenant. Let's just read this. It's interesting. For Yahweh Elohim of hosts shall make a consumption, even determined in the midst of all the land. Okay. We just saw the consumption here and talked about in Baruch. Where's Paul? Where's Isaiah getting this stuff? Where's Baruch getting this stuff? It's all the same thing. Okay, they're prophets. Isaiah 10, 21, 22. Let's go on to, let's try Isaiah 28. Maybe it's got to change somewhere. It's not surely all saying the same thing. Isaiah 28:5. Actually, I'm here. Let's 28:5. In that day shall Yahweh of hosts be for a crown of glory and the diadem of beauty and the residue of his people. So unto the residue of his people. Who are the residue of his people? The remnant, right? Let's go back to Isaiah 11:11. I skipped that one. You know, we're just going to go through a bunch of prophets, see what they're saying. It shall come to pass in that day that Yahweh shall set his hand again for the second time. That's key. To recover a remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria and from Egypt and from Pathros, from Cush and from Elam and from Shinar and Hamath and from the isles of the sea. So this is a second time he's going to recover his people, a remnant of his people. It's not the Exodus. This is not the Exodus. This is a second time he's going to do that. It's not the Exodus out of Egypt that he's going to pull a remnant of his people and place them in the land. This is a second time. It shall come to pass in that day that Yahweh shall set his hand the second time to recover a remnant of his people. Okay, is that anything different than Isaiah or than Baruch saying? No. Is that anything different than Ezra? No. Is that anything different than Revelations or Romans or Zephaniah? No. They're all saying the same thing. Let's go to 11:16. Let's find out who these people maybe is going to say. talking again about this remnant. And there shall be a highway, highway for the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria. Okay. Israel was taken captive into Assyria. All right. The Assyrians are the ones who took them captive. Okay. So he's going to, there shall be a highway for the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, like as was to Israel in the day that he came up out of the land of Egypt. This is not the Exodus out of Egypt, right? Okay, this is Isaiah. This is 990 years after Moses. He's not talking about this Exodus out of Egypt. He's comparing it to the Exodus of Egypt. But it's not the Exodus of Egypt. What is it? This is another Exodus. He's gathering his people from all the nations, he says. And we're going to see it over and over. And there shall be a highway for the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria. The Assyrians are the ones that took them out, like it was to Israel in the day that he came up to deliver them out of the land of Egypt. This is the second time. This is the second time he's going to gather a remnant, but not out of Egypt, but out of every nation on the planet. We're not going to go there, but Ezekiel talks plainly that I'm going to talk to you face to face, just like I did your fathers when I brought them up out of the land of Egypt. He's talking to Israel. Specifically, I'm going to speak to you face to face, just like I did your fathers when I brought them out of Egypt. So is that different than Baruch? No, they're a remnant of people. How many will they be? Baruch asked the question, how many will there be? Ezra answers it in second Ezra and said there'll be like a drop from a wave, not a lot. The path is narrow. But anyway, let's keep going. We're going to get through this. Isaiah 11:16, maybe we did that one. Yep. Isaiah 51:16, maybe later on in Isaiah he changes it. Maybe 51:16. And I have put my words in thy mouth, and I have covered thee in the shadow of mine hand. All right, now Baruch is saying that he's sheltering you under his wings. Psalms is saying that under the feathers of his wings, you're going to find that shelter. Isaiah here is comparing it to being under the shadow of his hand. Your protection is coming. It's another description of the same thing. I have put my words in your mouth. I have covered you with the shadow of my hand, that I may plant the heavens and the foundations of the earth. Say to Zion, thou art my people. Okay. I'm going to jump out of order here. I'm going to run to Hosea. Let's just look at Hosea. See, Hosea says the same thing. Hosea 1:10. Yet the number of the children of Israel. Paul is quoting this, right? We heard this. Yet the number of the children of Israel will be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass in the place where it was said to them, you are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, you are the sons of the living Elohim. Okay, so we're talking about Israel. We're talking about, where did Yah tell Israel, you are not my people? Hosea tells us, well, let's read it. It tells us, then shall the children of Judah and the children of Israel be gathered together. Same thing. A remnant's coming back, and appoint themselves one head. Who's the one head? The Messiah. And they shall come up out of the land, for great shall be the day of Jezreel. Okay. Yet, let's see. In the place where it was said to them, you are not my people. Where was it said to Israel, you are no longer my people? In Jezreel. So where's Jezreel? Well, we know it today as Megiddo. Where's it going to be told to them, you are my people again? Where, in the place where it was said unto them, you are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, you are the sons of the living Elohim. In Megiddo. right? They're going to be told again, they are the sons of the living Elohim and Megiddo. So let's go back and compare that to what we just saw in Isaiah 51, 51:16. And I have put my words in thy mouth. I have covered thee in the shadow of my hand, that I might plant the heavens and lay the foundations of the earth. Say to Zion, thou art my people. Where was it said to them, you are not my people? In Jezreel. Where is it going to be said to them, you are my people? In Jezreel, Megiddo, Armageddon. Okay, that's an end time event. This is everywhere. It's saying the same thing everywhere. Is Isaiah saying anything different than Baruch? No. Is he saying anything different than Isaiah? Saying anything different than Ezra or Zephaniah? No, they're all saying the exact same thing. Let's see if maybe Jeremiah is saying something different. Let's go to 6:9. We're going to get through these and we're just going to pull up a few more and stop. I could go on for days like this. It's everywhere. Thus says Yahweh of hosts, they shall glean the remnant of Israel as a vine. How do you know if you're the remnant? Well, in Revelation, it says that you have the commandments of Yahweh and the testimony of the Messiah, this remnant. Turn back thy hand as a grape gatherer into the baskets. Let's just read the next verse. To whom I speak, shall I speak and give warning that they may hear. Behold, their ear is uncircumcised. They're not keeping the Torah, and they cannot hearken. Scales are on their eyes. Behold, the word of Yahweh is unto them a reproach. They have no delight in it. Is that saying anything different than Baruch? Right? For I see many of your people who have withdrawn from your covenant and cast the yoke of your Torah, cast away the yoke of your Torah. Ezra's saying in second Ezra, he said they hated your Torah. Is that anything different than we're seeing in Jeremiah? Behold, I speak and give warning that they may hear. Behold, their ear is uncircumcised. They're not in covenant, and they cannot hearken. They can't hear. They have scales on their ears. Behold, the word of Yah is unto them a reproach. The word of Yah, the Torah, is a reproach. They have no delight in it. That's where we find ourselves today, guys. It's not taught in the pulpits on Sundays, and it's been done away with. The Old Testament is old. It's not. That's where the covenant is. Okay. The Messiah comes in the New Testament, but we talk about the new covenant, but we don't understand the new covenant. Let's see. Let's keep going. We're going to get through these 30. Let's go 23:3. Jeremiah. Maybe he's saying something different here. And I will gather a remnant of my flock. There's that remnant again. Just keeps turning up. I will gather a remnant of my flock out of all the countries where I've driven them. Right? Until the fullness of the Gentiles come back. Yeah. That's the same thing Paul's saying in Romans. Yeah. And I will bring them again to their folds, and they shall be fruitful and increase. He's bringing them back. It says plainly that we talked about the remnant would come back, and they would have the Messiah would rule and reign over them forever and ever. Remember, we read that a while ago. Same thing. I will set shepherds over them and shall feed them, and they shall fear no more, nor be dismayed, neither shall they be lacking, saith Yahweh. Same thing. Exactly the same thing. Let's go 31:7-9. These prophets are all saying the exact same thing. For thus says Yahweh, sing with gladness for Jacob, and shout among the chief nations. Publish ye, praise ye, and say, O Yahweh, save thy people, thy remnant of Israel. Who's this remnant of Israel? Well, they're the ones keeping commandments of Yahweh. and have a testimony of the Messiah, right? John defines it. Behold, I will bring them out of the north country, and I will gather them from the coast. I'm going to gather them from all the nations, a remnant of the house of Israel. And with them the blind and the lame and the woman with child and her that travaileth with child together. A great company shall return thither. Sounds a little bit like the first Exodus, right? That's the same thing. Isaiah was just comparing it to the first Exodus, but we know it wasn't the first Exodus. He says it's the second one. He's going to pull people not just from Egypt this time. He's going to pull them from every nation on the planet, a remnant from the house of Israel. Baruch is not saying anything different than Jeremiah or Isaiah or Zephaniah or Micah or Malachi or Hosea. Any of the prophets, they are all saying the exact same thing. He's going to gather a remnant in the end times. How do you know who the remnant are? According to John in Revelation, they're those keeping the commandments of Yahweh, the Torah, and have a testimony of the Messiah. These are not my words. These are their words. 7 through 9, they shall come with weeping and supplications, and I will lead them. Every time it describes these people coming back, it always says the same thing. They're weeping. And he said, I'm going to wipe the tears from your eyes, over and over and over, talking about these people. When they get back to the land, he tells them, you know, I'm going to wipe they've seen horrendous things. These are not idle words. He's not saying this just to fill a page up. They shall come with weeping and supplications, and I will lead them, and I will cause them to walk by the rivers of the waters in a straight way, wherein they shall not stumble. For I am a father to Israel. Ephraim is my firstborn. If you haven't seen my teaching on the house of Israel, Ephraim is one of the names of the house of Israel. The house of Israel, those that are far off. These are all descriptions of the house of Israel. Fly. Okay. Let's jump to Matthew. And let's go back to New Testament. See, maybe again, these are red letters, 24, 24. 24, 24. And there shall arise false messiahs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they would deceive the very elect. Who are these very elect? The remnant, the ones keeping the commandments of Yahweh and holding the testimony of the Messiah. Nothing different here. These elect are the remnant in the end times. And while I'm here, I'm just going to touch on it. Last week, we talked about it in our Sabbath meeting, but I don't know how many people know Klaus Schwab, the head of the World Economic Forum. They just met in Davos a few weeks back, but he gave an interview with Breitbart, Klaus Schwab did, and he said, talking about the salvation of the world, he had the wisdom that was going to bring salvation to the world through this meeting in Davos. And they asked him, what are the problems we're facing in Davos? And he said, well, there's going to be wars and there are wars and rumors of wars. There's famines, there's pestilence, there's earthquakes, there's floods, there's droughts. All of these things are the problems we're going to have to face at Davos this year. And I'll post that video probably in the next week about Klaus Schwab and his interview with Breitbart. But he said, we're going to bring the salvation to the world. We've got the answers. These are the problems facing the world, but we have the cure. All right, well, let's just go back while we're in 24 and let's see where, and we'll go to 24:12. And because iniquity shall abound. What is iniquity? We'll look it up in Strong's. Iniquity is those who do not keep the law, specifically the law of Moses. That's pretty close to a direct quote of Strong's. The Torah. And because Torahlessness shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure to the end, the same shall be saved. Well, wait a minute. I thought we were raptured out. No, the ones that make it to the end will be saved. But let's go back. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am the Messiah, and shall deceive many, and you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled. These things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. 3 weeks ago, when they interviewed Klaus Schwab, what did he say the problems facing the world were? Wars and rumors of wars, famines, pestilence, earthquakes, droughts, floods. These are the problems that the world is facing. And Klaus is saying, we got the salvation for the world. We have your answer. So where are we in time? Well, according to Klaus Schwab, we're right here. And all of these are the beginning of sorrows. Right. So where are we in time? According to Klaus Schwab, we're in the beginning of sorrows. That's the things that the world is facing right now. Then what's next? Okay, well, if we're in the beginning of sorrows, then they shall deliver you up to be afflicted and shall kill you. You shall be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Well, wait a minute. How can they kill you if you're raptured? We'll get to that. Then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall arise and shall deceive many. Kind of like Klaus Schwab with the salvation of the earth. He has the answer, right? He has an answer for these wars and rumors of wars and famines and pestilence and all these things coming upon the earth. He has the answer, right? And many false prophets shall arise and deceive many, and because iniquity, torelessness, shall abound, the love of many will wax cold. But he that shall endure to the end, the same shall be saved. Wait a minute. I thought we were going to be taken out of here. But it's saying here that the one that endures to the very end will be saved. Is that any different than what Baruch is saying? No. Is that any different than what Isaiah is saying? No, a remnant. Is that anything different than John saying in Revelation? No, the beast is the dragon is going to be wroth with the woman, and he's going to be after those who have the remnant, who have the testimony of the Messiah and keep the commandments of Yahweh. It doesn't say they're not going to be here. He's after them. He's chasing them. But he that shall endure to the end, the same will be saved. Is that any different than Baruch? No. Or Ezra? No. I've seen the whole world, Ezra saying it. Everybody burns. Is there nothing we can do? No. Well, okay, write this down and maybe it'll help. And he writes it down. He asked the angel again, did we make a difference? And he said, very little. And he said, the remnant will be like the drop out of a wave. I'm not making this stuff up. They're all saying the same thing, this remnant. Okay, a few more and we're going to be done. Micah 7:18. Let's see if Micah, maybe I got a daughter named Micah, surely Micah's giving us some hope. Micah 7:18. Okay, 7:18. Who is a God like unto thee, Elohim, like unto thee, that pardoneth iniquity? Okay, so who pardoned our iniquity? The Messiah. Right? And what is iniquity? Transgression of the Torah. Specifically, John says plainly, transgression of sin is transgression of the Torah. The concordance won't define it, but John does. Elohim that pardoneth iniquity, Torahlessness. I'm not making this stuff up. I'm telling you what it says. And passes by the transgression. Transgression of what? According to John, sin is transgression of the Torah. By the transgression of the remnant. There's the remnant again. They just keep popping up of his heritage. He retaineth not his anger forever, because he delighteth in mercy. All right. Baruch talks about that those that were before subject and afterwards withdrew and mingled himself with the seed, so he scattered them. And for those that before knew not, but afterwards knew life and mingled only with the seed of his people, which had separated itself in the time of these, is the latter. That's the remnant. They're all saying the same thing. Who are these people? He retaineth not his anger forever. He says, I'm not going to be mad at you forever, Israel. I'm going to bring you back. Because he delighteth in mercy. I'm going to show mercy to whom I'll show mercy, he says. Okay, 7:18. Let's go to 5:7. Maybe 5:7 saying something different. It's everywhere, guys. And the remnant of Jacob shall be in the midst of many people as the dew from Yahweh, as the showers upon the grass, that tarrieth not for man, nor withdraw from the sons of men. The remnant of Jacob shall be among the Gentiles, till the fullness of the Gentiles come in the midst of many people, as a lion among the beasts of the forest, and a young lion among the flocks of the sheep. Woe, or who, if he go through, both treadeth down and teareth in pieces, and none can deliver. That's just describing what the house of Israel is going to do in the end time, this remnant, a remnant of the house of Israel. They're going to be in the midst of many people, and he's going to gather them out of those people. The fullness of the Gentiles will come back, the house of Israel. Let's see, where are we at? 5, 7, 8. Let's go to Amos. We're about done. Amos. Let's see if Amos 9:12. 12. That they may possess the remnant of Edom and all the heathen which are called by my name, saith Yahweh that does this. And let's go on down, and there's a little bit more about it. And I will bring again the captivity of my people Israel, and they shall build waste cities, inhabit them, and shall plant vineyards and drink the drink of wine. They shall also make gardens and eat the fruit of them. And I will plant them upon their own land. Who's he talking about, right? He's not talking about when he brought them out of Egypt and planted them on their land. This is new. This is after that, right? This is Amos. But he's going to bring them back and plant them in the land again. And they shall no more be pulled out of their own land, which I have given them, saith Yahweh, thy Elohim. This is something different. Isaiah said it's the second time he's going to go out and get the remnant, right? Amos is saying the same thing. 9:12, yeah, we got that one. Okay, Hosea 1:10, we got that one. Let's go to 1 John, see what John's got to say about it. I don't know if it's 1 John or John. John 1:12. It's just John 1:12. But as many as receive him, to them he gave power to become the sons of God. What is he saying in Hosea? Isn't that exactly what he just said? Let's go back to Hosea. I mean, you've got to see the picture. Hosea 1:10. Isn't that exactly what he says in 1:10? Yet the number of children of Israel be the sand of the sea, cannot be measured, numbered. It shall come to pass in that place it was said to them, you are not my people. There it shall be said to them, you are the sons of the living God. Right? Isn't that what we just read in John? John's saying the exact same thing. John 1:12. Sons of the living God. 1:12. But as many as received him, to them he gave power to become the sons of God. Same thing Hosea was saying. In that place where it said to them, you are not my people, there you'll be told you are my people, and there you'll become the sons of the living God. Same exact thing John's saying. To them he gave power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. I will restore a pure language to you so you can call upon my name. We've already been there. We've already talked about 1 Thessalonians 4:17. Behold, I tell you a mystery. We're not all going to die, but in twinkling of an eye, the dead in Christ are going to rise first. And then Baruch talking about the earth giving up its dead. That's going to be on the very end. That's the last of the prophecy to Baruch. That was the end, that the dead in Christ would rise. And I could show you that in Thessalonians. I'm not going to go there, but we could show that. We're going to end up in Daniel, maybe Daniel. Surely Daniel's not saying the same thing. Daniel 12:1. At that time shall Michael stand up. This is at the same time as the vision in Baruch. This is at the end, right? Right when Hastan's thrown into the pit. This is the end of Revelation. And the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. There you'll be called the sons of the living Elohim. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. What day is it? It's a day of trouble. It's a day of tribulation in that day. And in that time, thy people shall be delivered, and every one that shall be found written in the book, and as many as sleep in the dust of the earth. When is this happening? It's the end. As many of them as sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Is Daniel saying anything different than Baruch? No. Is he saying anything different than Paul in Thessalonians? No. Is he saying anything different? It's the last days, the end of the end. So we're going to call it there. I could go on for hours. I can go on for days talking about this remnant. Who's the remnant? They're the ones keeping the testimony of the Messiah, having the testimony of the Messiah, keeping the commandments of Yahweh. These remnant are everywhere in all the prophets. Well, but the Old Testament's not for us. If you want to know the prophecies about the end of time, it is, because the only time you're going to find it in the New Testament is if Paul or one of the others are talking about what the prophet said. They're not prophets. So I'm going to ask the question where we started. Was Paul a prophet? No. Paul was a scholar. They're not the same. A scholar is book smart. A scholar is wise. He has understanding. It's not like Yah said, this is going to happen and write this down because this is a future event. Write this down. Paul was not a prophet. Paul was a scholar. And I'm going to prove that out to you, and then we're going to be done. We're going to go to 2 Peter. 2 Peter 3. We'll start in verse 1. The second epistle, beloved, I now write to you, in both which I stir up in your pure minds in the way of remembrance, that you may be mindful of the words which were spoken before by the holy prophets. We have just spent 2 hours going through the words of the prophets. The things that you've been told don't apply to us. It's not what Peter's saying. Peter is saying that you need to be mindful of the words which were spoken before by the holy prophets, and of the commandment of the apostles of Yahweh, or Yeshua, our Savior. Knowing in the last days there will come scoffers walking after their own lust. I'm not going to get into that. Let's just jump forward to 3:15. Now we're going to get a warning from Peter about Paul. Peter is going to warn us about Paul. Wherefore, beloved, seeing that you look for such things, be diligent that you be found in him in peace, without spot and blameless, an account of the long suffering of our of Yeshua's salvation, even as our beloved brother Paul, also according to the wisdom. Now let's stop on that word wisdom. Was Paul a prophet or was he a scholar? He was a scholar and he had wisdom. Paul was not being told prophecy from Yah and revealing it to men. Paul was reading what the prophet said and telling the people what the prophet said. Same thing I'm doing right now with you. I'm telling you what the prophet said. Now, I am not Paul. Paul is, I am not a sandal on his foot. Paul was a genius. But Paul, we have to understand, first of all, most of the time, Paul was not speaking to rabbis in the synagogue. He was talking to Gentiles who knew nothing about scripture, and he was telling those Gentiles what the prophet said. Now, Paul knew, he was all over the fact that Israel, a remnant of Israel, would return. That he was all over it. We read it in Romans. We read it where they telling how they scattered them and how they would come back. I've done videos on that. But Paul was a genius when it came to the prophets. He knew what the prophets said. He was doing nothing different than what I'm doing with you right now, which is telling you what the prophet said. Now, all your preachers are going to tell you that Old Testament's old, it's done, it's not for us. Well, if you want to know what's going to happen in the end time, you're either going to hear what Paul is quoting from them, or you're going to have to go back to the Old Testament and read what the prophet said. What was the warning given to us by Peter? Right? That you may be mindful of the words which were spoken before by the holy prophets. Right? Before you're going to understand what Paul's saying, you've got, Peter's warning us. You've got to know what the prophet said, right? So in 15, even as our beloved brother Paul, also according to the wisdom given to him, not that he was given the gift of prophecy, he was given the gift of wisdom, discernment. He knew what the prophet said. He was a genius. Wisdom given to him, which he hath written unto you. He's telling you what the prophets said. Okay, if you want to know what Paul believed, you got to know what the prophets said. If you want to know what Paul believed, read the prophets. Paul is telling you what the prophets said. We spent 2 hours going through what the prophet said just about the remnant. Right? Baruch says it. Ezra says it. Isaiah says it. Jeremiah says it. Hosea says it. Zephaniah said it. Zechariah says it. Malachi says it. Micah says it. Hosea says it. Daniel says it. They all say the same thing. Ezekiel, we didn't go there, but Ezekiel's saying the exact same thing. If you want to know what Paul thinks, read the prophets. The wisdom given unto him that he hath written unto you from the prophets. Also in all his epistles, speaking in them things which are some things hard to be understood, which they that are unlearned in what? The prophets. You've got to know what the prophet said, right? Isn't that what he says? 3:3. Knowing first, 3:2. Be mindful of the words which were spoken before by the holy prophets. They're unlearned in what? They that are unlearned in what the prophet said. If you don't know what the prophet says, what's going to happen? They that are unlearned and unstable wrestle, as they do with other scriptures, to their own destruction. Okay? If you don't know what the prophet said, you're going to take Paul's words, as you do all of the epistles and the other scriptures, and you're going to wrestle them to your own destruction. I didn't write this. Peter warned us this. Yea, therefore, beloved, seeing you know these things before, beware, lest you also, being led away with the error of the wicked, fall from your own steadfastness. We're right back where we started. We started about a prophecy in Baruch. And the mountains and the forest were the word. but a flood came up and corrupted the word. And people full of iniquity, like wild beasts, fled into that forest. It was talking about the Roman Empire, the Principate, the end of the first if you divide the Roman Empire into three, this would be the first part of the Roman Empire, the first from 28 AD up until about 300, 28 BC up to about 300 AD. The Principate, the first part of that Roman Empire, the part where the Pope comes up out of it, that the word was corrupted. We've gone from that point till now that the Torah has been somehow done away with. Is that what the prophets said? No, they're not saying that. Nowhere are they saying that. It says that it will be for a while, but at the end, a remnant will come back. And what does John describe them as? They're going to be the ones keeping the Torah and have a testimony of the Messiah. That will be the remnant. A remnant will come out of the earth that keeps that commandments of Yah and has a testimony of the Messiah. It's everywhere. Every prophet talks about it. So beware lest you, being led away by the error of the wicked, fall from your own steadfastness. The error of the wicked was that forest, the word was corrupted. Baruch in his vision saw it. He said, I see at the end of time, I see all these people who have turned away from the Torah. Right? Isn't that what he says? Lo, I see many of your people who have withdrawn from your covenant and cast from them the yoke of your Torah. Okay. Same thing Isaiah is saying, same thing Jeremiah is saying, same thing everybody's saying. Paul is not a prophet. Paul is a scholar. Paul has wisdom. If you want to know what Paul believes, read the prophets. Okay. I think I'm going to call it there. We could go on and on forever, but I'm going to call it. It's been a long teaching. There's been a lot of ground covered. Is Baruch saying anything different? I just read 2 chapters of Baruch. Is he saying anything different than any of the prophets? No, they're all saying the exact same thing. I wish Baruch were still in here. There's a lot of his visions that shine a light on the end days, what they're going to look like, what's going to happen. Prophecy about that day of trouble that we don't get in the King James today. Now, 180 years ago, more now, I guess, 200 years ago, these books were removed. They shouldn't have been removed. These, if you go look at what were the Essenes studying in the Dead Sea Scrolls, they were studying Baruch. They were studying Second Ezra. They were studying Enoch. A lot of these books that are not in our King James. In fact, quick tidbit on Enoch. They tried to trick the Messiah and they asked him a question about this man who married a woman. Well, the man died. And as was the custom, the man's brother married the woman. Well, then that man died without having any children. And then, as was the custom, another brother married the wife or the woman. And this happened 7 times. And they asked the Messiah, they said, okay, so now tell me, and if there's a life after this life, some of them didn't believe in life after this life. They said, if there is a life after this life, who will she be married to in the end times, or after the millennium? Who will she be married to? And Yeshua told him, he said, you err by not reading your scripture. He said, just as the angels do not marry, neither is there marriage in heaven. And so I challenge people, show me in the King James where it says that there is no marriage, the angels don't get married. it's not there. You got to find, the only place you're going to find that's in Enoch. Okay. And he said, you err by not knowing your scripture. Okay. That was in Enoch. All these books that were removed that would give a whole different light on the end times and what's coming. Second Ezra is a wealth of information. Jubilees and Jasher. There were many scrolls of Jubilees and Jasher found in the Dead Seas. That's what the people were reading 300 BC to 70 AD. That's what these Essenes were studying. Was it the King James Bible now? But it's a scripture to them. And if they thought it was valid, maybe we ought to take a look.